The air shimmered with heat as the sound of snarls tore through the tall grass. Michael Carter's boots crunched over dry earth as he skidded to a halt, eyes locking on a tiny golden form cowering beneath an acacia tree. The cub's wide amber eyes darted from him to the circling hyenas, their teeth flashing white in the glare of the afternoon sun. Dust swirled in the wind, carrying the scent of blood and fear. Michael's hand tightened around the weathered wooden handle of the walking stick he carried. It was his only weapon. One of the hyenas lunged forward, its growl deep and guttural. The cub flattened her ears, letting out a trembling, high-pitched hiss. Michael stepped between them, heart pounding, his shadow falling over the little lioness. The hyena slowed, eyeing him with wary hunger. The world seemed to narrow to a circle of dust, heat, and bare teeth. A guttural laugh echoed from the largest hyena, its thick neck rolling as it paced just beyond Michael's reach. His mouth was dry, but his mind was crystal clear. If they sensed weakness, it was over. The cub's flank pressed lightly against his boot, trembling with every shallow breath she took. Michael lifted his stick, slapping it hard against the dirt to send a burst of sound through the air. The smaller hyenas flinched, but didn't back away entirely. Sweat traced down the side of his face, stinging his eyes. The smell of their musky fur and rotting meat made his stomach tighten. The cub gave a soft, almost questioning whimper, as if unsure whether to trust him. Michael didn't dare look down. Breaking eye contact with predators could be fatal. The wind carried the metallic scent of a fresh kill somewhere nearby. One hyena darted forward, snapping its jaws inches from Michael's shin. He pivoted, bringing the stick across in a sharp, controlled swing. The crack of wood against bone rang out, and the hyena yelped, retreating 2 steps. The others froze for a heartbeat, their yellow eyes calculating. Michael heard the cub's breathing quicken, her tail twitching against his boot. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to run, but his legs stayed rooted. The largest hyena began to circle, trying to flank him. Michael mirrored the movement, turning so the cub stayed in his shadow. A bead of blood trickled down his temple. He hadn't even felt the gash until now. The heat pressed down like a weight, but he couldn't let his guard drop. A shrill bark split the air as 2 more hyenas appeared over the rise. Michael's stomach sank. They were outnumbered 5 to 1 now. He shuffled backward, his heel brushing the hard roots of the acacia tree. The cub pressed closer, almost tripping him. His mind raced, scanning for anything, a rock, a branch, a slope that could give them a chance. A hyena tested the distance again, snapping at the tip of his stick. Michael's pulse hammered in his ears. The cub's fur bristled, and for the first time she gave a fierce, kittenish growl. It was absurdly small against the chorus of hyena laughter. Still, it sparked a flicker of defiance in his chest. Michael shifted his stance, planting his boots firmly in the dry, cracked earth. He knew the hyenas were impatient hunters. They'd strike if they thought he would tire. The cub's warmth at his ankle was the only thing grounding him. A sudden gust lifted a cloud of dust into their eyes, making the hyenas blink and snarl. Michael seized the moment, stepping forward with a shout that ripped his throat raw. The frontmost hyena backed off a step, not from fear, but surprise. One in the back darted sideways, searching for a gap in his guard. Michael's muscles burned, but he turned with it, stick raised. The cub's tiny claws pricked his boot through his worn pants. Somewhere deep inside, he made a silent promise. She would not die here. The hyenas began to fan out again, voices blending into an unsettling chorus. Michael's stick trembled in his hands, not from weakness, but from sheer adrenaline. A shadow crossed overhead, a vulture, patient and silent. The cub's ears flicked toward the sound, but she stayed pressed to him. One hyena crept closer, paws silent, muzzle twitching. Michael took a sharp breath and feinted a strike, making it recoil. He could feel their frustration building, see it in their restless pacing. The air was thick with tension, as though the entire savanna was holding its breath. Sweat stung his cut, and his throat felt like sandpaper. And then, without warning, the largest hyena lowered its head and charged. Michael lunged forward, meeting the rush with a forceful strike. The blow connected just above the predator's snout, making it stumble sideways. The other hyenas flinched, then hesitated. The momentum was broken. Michael stepped in, shouting again, his voice cracking. The cub startled at the sound, then crouched low, tail lashing. Hyenas aren't used to prey that fights back this hard, and they began to shift uncertainly. Michael saw it. that thin thread of doubt, and pressed harder. He stomped forward, swinging the stick in wide arcs. One by one, they backed away, still growling but losing their hunger. Finally, the circle broke. The hyenas trotted off, melting into the tall grass with occasional backward glances. Michael's shoulders slumped, the weight of the moment finally crashing down. The cub stayed by his leg, panting, eyes darting between him and the fading predators. A dry wind tugged at the loose strands of her tawny fur. Michael crouched slowly, holding out his hand, palm open. The cub blinked, then looked away, as if pretending she hadn't noticed. Her tail twitched, a silent decision still being made. Michael didn't push. Trust could not be forced. He simply sat in the dust beside her, listening to her uneven breathing. The savanna was quiet again, but the air still hummed with what had just happened. Michael pushed himself up slowly, feeling the ache in his shoulders from holding the stick so tightly. The cub stayed low to the ground, her head turning with sharp feline movements. Far away, the hyena's laughter still echoed faintly, drifting over the dry plain. Michael knew they could circle back. He scanned the horizon. Heat shimmered in every direction, the light bending and warping the air. Somewhere to the east, he thought he saw the darker smear of trees. If there was shade, there might be water. The cub took a hesitant step toward him, then stopped, watching his every move. He gestured with his chin toward the distant grove, talking softly even though she couldn't understand. "Come on, little one. We can't stay here." They began moving, Michael keeping a steady pace despite the stabbing heat in his temples. The cub trailed behind at first, ears swiveling toward every rustle in the grass. Her small paws left barely visible prints in the dust. A warm wind carried the faint scent of rain. Far away, too far to matter now. Michael's boots sank slightly in the looser patches of sand. Each step reminded him of the dry rasp in his throat. The cub gave a small chirp, a sound halfway between a meow and a bird call. He glanced back, catching her wide eyes fixed on him. It wasn't trust yet, but it wasn't fear anymore. That was enough to keep him going. The sun climbed higher, turning the ground into a griddle under their feet. Michael's shirt clung to his back, soaked in sweat. Flies buzzed around his ears, relentless. The cub's pace slowed, her sides rising and falling more rapidly. He knelt beside her, noting how her tongue lolled out, dry and pale. His canteen was nearly empty, 3 mouthfuls at most. Michael uncapped it, letting a few drops fall into his palm. The cub sniffed, then licked tentatively, her rough tongue scraping his skin. When she finished, she sat back, blinking slowly. Michael smiled faintly, though the weight of the remaining journey pressed heavy on his chest. They pushed forward again, the earth cracking under each step. The horizon felt no closer than before. Every so often, Michael thought he heard movement behind them, but saw nothing. The cub stumbled once, quickly regaining her footing. Michael slowed to match her smaller stride. The sound of his heartbeat in his ears was almost louder than the wind. A shadow crossed the ground, another vulture, circling lower this time. The cub hissed faintly at it, eyes following its lazy loops in the sky. Michael kept walking, willing the tree line ahead to be real. Somewhere inside, a thin strand of hope held them both upright. By midday, their steps had grown sluggish. Michael's lips were cracked, his tongue thick in his mouth. The cub was panting harder now, tail drooping. He scanned the plain, desperate for signs of change. Then he saw it, a darker patch in the grass, swaying differently than the rest. It was a path, faint but visible, worn by hooves and paws. Michael crouched, touching the flattened stems. It was fresh. Animals didn't travel far from water. A flicker of relief warmed his chest, though he knew predators might be waiting. He gestured for the cub to follow, and they turned toward the trail. The path wound through low scrub, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth. Michael felt the temperature drop slightly. Shade was near. The cub's pace quickened, ears pricked forward. A faint trickle reached his ears, almost lost in the rustle of leaves. He quickened his steps, pushing through a tangle of thorny branches. And then it was there, a shallow pool, fed by a thin stream of water. The cub rushed forward without hesitation, lapping greedily. Michael knelt beside her, cupping his hands in the cool water and drinking deeply. The taste was metallic, but it was life itself. For a brief moment, the world felt still. The silence broke with a low growl from across the water. Michael froze, droplets running down his chin. The cub's head shot up, ears flat, eyes locked on the far bank. A shadow moved between the reeds, larger than a hyena, more deliberate in its steps. The water's surface rippled as if disturbed by something heavy. Michael's hand went to his stick, heart thundering. The cub took a half step toward him, pressing close. The air thickened, each sound magnified. From the shadows, two golden eyes blinked slowly. And then a massive lion stepped forward. The lion's mane caught the sun, each strand glowing like molten copper. His massive paws pressed into the wet soil with a sound that was somehow soft and final. Michael's breath came shallow, his fingers tightening around the walking stick. The cub stayed at his side, her tail curled low, eyes wide and unblinking. A deep rumble rolled from the lion's chest, not an outright roar, but a warning. Michael didn't move. Any sudden motion might turn curiosity into aggression. The water between them shimmered, a thin barrier that felt far too fragile. A single fly buzzed past, breaking the silence. The lion's gaze flicked to the cub, then back to Michael. There was no mistaking it. The cub was his. Michael's stomach dropped. He'd stepped into a family's territory without knowing it. The big cat stepped forward into the shallows, water curling around his ankles. Every instinct told Michael to back away, but the cub stayed rooted to the spot. She gave a tiny, plaintive mewl, and the lion froze mid-step. Michael glanced down. The cub was trembling, not with fear, but something closer to recognition. The lion's nostrils flared as he took in her scent. Michael could almost feel the shift in the air. The rumble in the lion's chest softened. Still, the tension was a tight rope. One wrong move and it would snap. Michael swallowed hard, forcing his voice low and calm. "I'm not here to hurt her." From the reeds came another movement. Two lionesses, lean and powerful, emerging like ghosts. Their eyes locked on the cub, their ears twitching. Michael's pulse kicked hard. Now he was surrounded on three sides. The cub stepped forward cautiously, her small paws leaving ripples in the water. One of the lionesses gave a low chuff, a sound somewhere between a huff and a purr. Michael recognized it from documentaries, a greeting. The cub responded with a soft chirp, her tail flicking once. Still, the male lion didn't look away from Michael. The stick in his hand suddenly felt like both a shield and a provocation. He slowly lowered it until it touched the ground. The lionesses approached the cub, sniffing her fur, nudging her gently. The cub leaned into their touch, her tiny frame almost disappearing against their larger bodies. Michael exhaled, but too soon. A low snarl came from his left, where the grass shifted violently. His eyes snapped to the movement. Another hyena, larger than the rest, breaking from cover. In an instant, two more appeared behind it, drawn by the scent of water and weakness. Michael's chest tightened. He knew these weren't just scavengers, they were opportunists. The lions turned, muscles coiling under tawny fur. The air filled with a growl so deep it vibrated in Michael's ribs. The hyenas slowed, gauging their odds, but they didn't stop. One hyena tried to feint, darting in and snapping its jaws. The male lion lunged forward, water exploding beneath his paws. The hyena skidded back, teeth bared, but the two behind it fanned wider. Michael's hands clenched on his stick again, this time not to defend himself, but to guard the cub's flank. The lionesses flanked the little one, shielding her from the sides. The standoff stretched, each second wound tight as wire. Then, one of the hyenas made its move, aiming not for the lions, but for the man. Michael swung hard, wood meeting bone with a sickening crack. The hyena yelped, spinning away, but it was enough to ignite the fight. The lions erupted forward, a blur of muscle and power. Water splashed high into the air as claws raked across hyena hides. Michael backed toward the reeds, the cub pressed against his shin. A roar split the sky, so loud it seemed to shake the ground itself. The hyenas scattered, their retreat quick and disorderly, tails low. For a moment, all Michael could hear was the ragged sound of his own breathing. The lions regrouped, their bodies taut but victorious. The cub let out a small, triumphant sound, as if she'd fought alongside them. Michael couldn't help but smile, his chest aching with relief. The pride's eyes were on him again, but now there was no hostility. The male lion stepped closer, the water lapping gently around his legs. He stopped within arm's reach, towering over Michael. Up close, his breath was hot, and heavy with the smell of fresh meat. Michael kept his gaze steady, every muscle screaming to move but staying still. The lion's eyes flicked down to the cub, then back to the man. A deep chuff rumbled from his chest. Not quite approval, but not a threat. The cub padded forward, brushing against Michael's leg before joining the pride. She glanced back once, her gaze holding his for a beat longer than chance. Then she disappeared into the tawny wall of her family. Michael stood alone in the shallows, the silence settling around him like a second skin. Michael watched as the pride melted back into the reeds, the golden shapes fading into shadow. The ripples from their movement softened, leaving the pool glassy and still. The silence was almost too much after the chaos of the last minutes. He exhaled slowly, his knees threatening to give way. The stick in his hand felt suddenly heavy, like it belonged to a different man. The sun had begun its slow descent, tinting the savanna with a warmer, gentler light. Michael turned toward the path they had come from, ready to make the long walk back alone. That was when he heard it, a small, deliberate splash behind him. He froze, turning his head just enough to see. The cub was standing in the shallows, looking right at him. She was halfway between him and the pride, her tail curling in slow, measured arcs. The reeds whispered behind her as the lionesses paused, watching. The cub stepped forward, water lapping at her legs. Michael knelt instinctively, lowering himself so they were almost eye level. She came closer, her paws making tiny ripples that reached his knees. Her amber eyes caught the light, holding something new. Not just recognition, but choice. When she was close enough, she pressed her head gently against his arm. The roughness of her fur against his skin was startlingly real. Michael stayed still, not daring to break the moment. A low, soft sound rumbled from her chest, a cub's version of a purr. She pulled back just enough to look up at him again. The pride stirred in the background, but none approached. The cub's whiskers twitched as she leaned forward, licking his wrist once. Her tongue was rasping and warm, leaving a faint trace of water and earth. It wasn't the desperate licking of thirst. It was deliberate, almost ceremonial. Michael felt something tighten in his throat, though no words came. The cub sat for a moment in the shallows, tail swishing lazily. Then, with a small, decisive turn, she padded back toward the pride. The lionesses stepped aside to let her pass. The male lion didn't take his eyes off Michael. The sun dipped lower, painting the water in streaks of gold and fire. The cub glanced back once more before disappearing fully into the grass. Michael straightened slowly, his chest both lighter and heavier at the same time. He felt the imprint of her touch still lingering on his arm. The air smelled of wet earth, warm fur, and something else, a strange calm. His boots were heavy with mud as he stepped away from the pool. Each footfall sounded sharper now, like the world had shifted in some quiet way. Behind him, the reeds rustled once, then stilled. The savanna was returning to its rhythm. But Michael knew he would carry this moment for the rest of his life. The walk back was quiet, the horizon burning orange and purple. Shadows of birds crossed the sky, their cries distant and fading. The heat of the day softened into the cool breath of evening. Michael's legs ached, but there was a steady warmth in his chest that pushed him on. In the far distance, he thought he saw movement, a shape, low and swift, watching from the grass. He didn't stop. Some things were better left unspoken. By the time the first stars appeared, the pool and the pride were only memories in the dark. Yet every step carried the echo of that small head pressed against his arm. It was not ownership, not even friendship. It was recognition. And for Michael, that was enough. The first cool breeze of night swept over the land, rustling the dry grass. Michael paused to take it in, feeling the tension drain from his body. Above, the sky stretched wide and endless, dusted with stars. The events of the day seemed unreal, like something pulled from an old legend. But the faint, wet mark on his sleeve was proof that it had happened. He took a deep breath, the smell of the savanna filling his lungs. In the distance, a lion's roar rolled through the night, powerful and resonant. Michael smiled faintly, hearing in it not a threat, but a farewell. He turned toward camp, disappearing into the shadows. Behind him, the wild kept its secrets.